Sully to give him situational awareness. Now he has to land with the wings perfectly level to keep from possibly cartwheeling, digging a wingtip and cartwheeling the airplane. But one of the many fortunate things that day was that the river was actually calm. And more amazingly to New Yorkers, there were no boats in our way because it's a very heavily trafficked waterway. As our airplane blinked off its radar screen, our air traffic controller, Patrick Harton, thought to himself that he would never talk to anybody on that airplane again. We hit hard on the tail. It seemed like the river just flowed over the airplane. Water cascaded up into the windshield. But then it popped up, and it was just bobbing in the waves, the way you see in the picture. I turned to Sully and I said, well, that wasn't so bad. But we've lost all electrical power, and Sully knows that the flight attendants are waiting for him to command an evacuation. They're waiting for him to say, evacuate, evacuate. So he gets up and goes to the back to do that verbally. I stay behind to do an emergency evacuation checklist, which is, we have a procedure even for something like this. Now, our flight attendants didn't even know that we had landed in the water until they opened the doors and saw the Hudson River. We didn't have the time to tell them. But still, following their training, they instantly changed their commands to don life vests, come this way. And they keep saying that over and over and over again, don life vests, come this way. By the time I go back, the passengers are rapidly exiting the airplane. Several of them have jumped into the freezing water, attempting to swim to shore. And they realize that they wouldn't have gotten 10 feet in that water. It was 36, water temperature was 36 degrees that day. The river actually started to freeze over just 2 days later. So they had to be helped back onto the airplane or onto the wings of the airplane. The passengers were a big part of the success of this, by the way. They handled themselves very admirably. There was no pushing, there was no shoving. These were really professional passengers, though. This was a Thursday afternoon commuter flight out of New York City, not families going to Orlando. Sully and I went back to our mid-cabin, and we were getting life vests to pass out to the people on the wings. The life vests hang in pouches underneath the seats. The water there was about up to my knees, and it was freezing cold. Any part of your body that was in that water just ached to the bone. I started walking on the seats and the armrests just to keep my legs out of the water, but I still had to reach down with my hands under the seats into that ice water to get the life vests. Our passengers, as I said, were already exited out on the wings, and they were just, as you can see in the picture, just standing there waiting to be rescued at this point. They were so incredibly calm about the entire situation. In fact, 8 of them were so unfazed that when we did get rescued and taken to a ferry dock, they walked right through, went out to the curb, hailed a cab, went back out to LaGuardia, and demanded to be put on the next flight to Charlotte. Now back in the cabin where I am, the plane's filling up with water. I can see that. It's sinking lower and lower. But I was never more than about 20 feet from those overwing exits, so I thought I could probably get out if it suddenly started to act like it was going to sink. And after a while, we cleared out the entire area of flotation devices. And I remember Sully stood up in front of me and says, Jeff, let's get out of here. And we went back to the seat that, or the door that you normally board the airplane through. And I remember this kind of odd feeling, because when we were inside, it was calm. There was, it was just Sully and I, and we were getting life vests. We didn't really know what was going on outside the airplane. When we walked out that door into the raft, it was just pandemonium outside. The airplane was already surrounded by boats. There was a helicopter overhead that was dropping a police frogman into the water, and the blade wash was freezing everybody. In our raft were Sully and I, Donna, our A flight attendant, and an overload of passengers who were all wet and cold. I cut the tether that was holding the raft to the airplane, and the raft floated around the nose of the airplane. And one of those big passenger ferries, the New York waterway that carries people from New Jersey over to Manhattan Island, comes up right next to us, reverses his engines, and he comes to a stop. And of course, we're sitting down in the water, and the deck on this ferry is up about 6 or 7 feet. And I'm looking at this and thinking, what? This is just another obstacle. How are we supposed to get up there? And a crewman runs out on the deck and he throws a boarding net over the side, what they call a Jacob's ladder. I remember looking at that thinking, what is this, D-Day? I'm supposed to climb up this net? I mean, my hands are frozen. I can't even grip anything. He throws a rope at me, and I had to hold it in my elbow because I couldn't hold it with my hands anymore. And I'm just leaning up against the side of the boat in absolute misery as the passengers start to work their way up the deck. Once they got up there, Sully, I remember Sully behind me saying, Jeff, we better get out of here while we still can. And we climbed up the net as best we could. Once we got on the deck, we walked into the heated area of the boat. And as I walked through the door, there's one of our passengers there. And he had his flip phone. That's what people had back then, flip phones. And he just flipped it shut. And he looks at it, and he offers it to me. And I thought, maybe I should call somebody. But who do I call? Well, I thought, well, you know, this is the last day of a 4-day trip. My wife's expecting me home tonight, so it's probably not going to happen. So I'll call her and let her know. So I dial the number as best I can with my frozen hands. And she answers, and she says hi, and I said hi. And I said, I don't think I'm going to be home tonight. And of course she says, why? And for whatever reason, maybe with all the shock and awe of the last 20 minutes, I thought I had to get off that phone as rapidly as possible. And I said, well, we took off from LaGuardia, we hit birds, we flamed out both engines, we had to ditch the airplane in the Hudson River, we think we got everybody out okay. I gotta go. And I hung up. So then Sully takes the phone, and he tries calling his wife Lori, but you know, she's got caller ID, and she's talking to a friend of hers on the phone, so it beeps, and she says, oh, it's just Sully. He'll call back later if it's important. So then he tries calling our dispatcher. We have dispatchers in the aviation business. They file our flight plans, they put together our weather packages, and this fellow answers to his credit. And so Sully says, you know, Sully wants to tell him, you know, where we left the airplane. And he says, I don't have time to talk to you. We have an airplane down in the Hudson. Now this entire flight took 5.5 minutes. 2 minutes from takeoff to hitting the geese. 3.5 minutes from there to landing in the Hudson River. It's taken me over 6 times that long just to tell you about it.
Cactus 1549, 700, climbing 5,000.
Cactus 1549, departure to contact, I maintain 15,000.
Maintain 15,000, Cactus 1549.
Cactus 1549, turn left lane 270.
This is Cactus 1539, in birds, false thrust of propane, returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Sorry, stop your departure, he's got emergency returning. It's 1529, bird strike, he lost all engine, he lost the thrust in the engine, he's returning immediately.
Cactus 1529, which engines?
He lost thrust in both engines, he said.
Got it.
Cactus 1529, couldn't get it to you. Do you want to try to land 1913?
Well, we made it to Hudson.
Hi, Cactus 1549, it's going to be left traffic to runway 31.
Unable.
Okay, what do you need to land? Do you want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes, sir.
Teterboro, Vampire depart. Actually, LaGuardia departs guy emergency inbound.
Hey, good.
Check is 1529 over the George Washington Bridge. Wants to go to the airport right now.
Wants to go to airport. Check. Does he need assistance?
Yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1?
Runway 1, that's good.
Check is 1529. Turn right 280. You can land runway 1 in Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus. Cactus 15.9, radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport up here too, clocking about 7 miles. Eagle 54718, trail left thing 210.
210, 2718. I think he said he was going in the Hudson.
Cactus 15.9, you saw him?
Long enough for the politicians to arrive. Mayor Bloomberg and Governor Patterson came down to hold a press conference on site about something Sully and I thought we were the only ones that could possibly know what happened. But this is where Governor Patterson coined the phrase "the miracle" on the Hudson, which is what it's been known as ever since. But was this really a miracle? Now, Sully is the most professional and capable airline pilot that I've ever flown with. His leadership skills, his calmness are second to no one, and he certainly represents the finest of our profession. And our flight attendants, Donna, Sheila, and Doreen, showed incredible bravery in standing their ground and calmly evacuating the passengers following their training. But we weren't alone that day over the Hudson River. We weren't alone because of the revolution that's occurred within my career in safety engineering and training. In aviation, those two, safety and training, are very closely connected. And this is the true miracle, and what I would like to spend the rest of my time with you talking about. Specifically, how the airline industry was forward-looking and developed the processes and procedures to assist their employees to react positively and correctly in stressful and time-critical situations. The tagline of this conference is "Training Matters," and as you might guess, there are probably very few professions that require as much training as being an airline pilot. The airline world is a bit different than many industries. Decisions that can have a major effect on operations, on safety, even profits, often filter down to frontline employees like me. In the airline cockpit, there's no ability to go find out what your boss wants to do about something. You must make a decision, you must live with the consequences. And this is why it's critical for those of us in the cockpit to be trained with the procedures and systems to be successful. Management's role often isn't in making the best decisions themselves, because they are 1,000 miles away, but rather in creating the training environment in which those critical decisions can be made by their employee group in the field. Now, when I first entered the industry, we didn't have any of the tools to handle an emergency of this order. Safety efforts have been primarily focused on making the machines better. And we did build safer and better machines, but accidents still persisted. As we eliminated mechanical factors for accidents, one glaring cause remained: pilot error. The term used for an accident not caused by circumstance or mechanical failure, but by human mistake. We hadn't placed any emphasis on making our people better and giving them the training to operate and interact with technology and with each other. You heard some of the tools we use now in my narrative: checklists, flows, quick reference handbooks, procedures, call-outs, briefings. These are the tools that we as pilots use to seamlessly interact with the aircraft and with each other in even the most adverse situations. But let me tell you how we got here. By 1994, U.S. Airways, my airline, had 5 fatal crashes in 5 years. We were hemorrhaging cash in a bad economy. Bankruptcy was often talked about in the papers. Not exactly a great environment for positive change. In addition, our culture didn't really lend itself to wholesale change. We had a top-down management system dating from the early days of aviation, a system where position and rank defined our roles. We took a check ride every 6 months. It'd be like you're taking a driver's test every 6 months to prove your competency. But it was a test. It wasn't training as we do today. The check ride never varied. It was always identical. And there was no continuing education or attempts to improve our knowledge. In our industry, we had a safety management system based on the individual, the captain, depending on that individual's education, on that individual's abilities, and that individual's experiences. But an airline cockpit is a fast-changing environment, and it had become too complex for just one individual to manage. We needed to move to a safety management system with shared responsibility among the crew that utilizes all the resources of the organization. A system where defined processes and procedures act as the glue holding the employees together as one group for a common goal. We needed to form a team. In the early 1990s, they introduced the concept of cockpit resource management. And we underwent training to give us interpersonal skills and to communicate and work as a team. It really took a decade of consistent